And we're live. Good afternoon, everyone. We are still waiting for a few people. We're going to start at 5 past, if that's okay with you. Please bear with us. Thank you very much. Just 2 minutes.
Come. Hello there.
Hello. Sibongile and Ndashe, it's 5 past.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, everyone, for making the time to do this, to attend. What we thought we'll be able to do today is to build from what happened in October. If you remember, in October, those who were in Banjul, we had a meeting, and the purpose of the meeting was what is it that we needed to do in order to get the Litigants Group to start working again. We have had hiatus for the past few years with really not a lot of capacity to be able to do the work and to coordinate our activities, especially outside of the sessions. And that meant that the objectives of the Litigants Forum were not accomplished. So in October of 2019, ISLA, IHRDA, and the Center for Human Rights at the University of Pretoria were given a mandate to go and work on a draft strategy, which we finalized in January and shared with the Litigants Forum. And the hope was that when we meet again in April, we will be able to go through the strategy, and then from there we will be able to agree on the work plan, but also have various people come up and take on various tasks. We have always had IHRDA as our secretariat, but there was a time when there was financial support, but over the past number of years, we haven't had that support. So the second part of this, the first one is to really talk about the strategy, and then some of the things in detail of what we see ourselves doing this year. And then from there, Dayo will talk to us about the institutional and operational arrangements that are proposed. And we'll talk about, I don't know if Michael has been able to attend, but the other part is that we will be able to talk about the implications of the rules of procedure for the communications mandate. And some of you may have attended a number of sessions where we talk about this. But this is really to be able to help us align some of the things, especially the things where there is still no clarity on with our strategy, to see how we continue to advocate for those things as part of strengthening the communications mandate. In the last section, we are going to talk about the revival of the working groups of the Commission. So we'll start and the conversation on just an outline of the strategy, and then we'll take questions, and from there Dayo will give a presentation about the institutional and operational arrangements. And if Michael Nyako from the Center for Human Rights is able to join us, he'll be able to talk about the strategy, about the implications of the rules of procedure. And then we will, the last thing that we will look at is the working groups. And we hope that this is going to be a kind of participatory meeting so that people are able to share their own views on the strategy as I'm going to outline it. But also we are looking for volunteers to carry out some of the activities that will be proposed in the work plan, and also people to volunteer to be part of the working groups. The other voice that you will hear is my colleague, Tiffany Ibrahim. Tiffany has joined ISLA as a collaborations and advocacy manager, and part of the work is to support our efforts at the African Commission. And so Tiffany will also be working very closely with Dayo in terms of providing support for the work of the Litigants Group, whilst we still look for money to get a full-time coordinator for the Litigants Forum. So now I'm going to start with the presentation. Just by show of hands, may I get a sense of how many people were able to read the strategy when it was circulated? Have people been able to kind of look at the strategy before this? Tiffany, do we have hands?
We do not have any hands, no. Oh wait, Ruth. Ruth's hand has gone up.
We have Bruce. Tiffany, please project the presentation. I see you've made me a presenter. I'll struggle with the controls. I have got a very short memory span, so sometimes I just switch off things I shouldn't be switching off. So please help me project the presentation and the strategy.
and also that I am needing to learn more about how to present. Yeah.
Okay, give me a moment.
Okay, thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
All right.
All right, cool. Let us start. Thank you. Next slide, please. There are 5 objectives that we have set out as being the objectives of this group. One of the things we have all kind of witnessed over the past number of years trying to advocate for a strengthening of the communications mandate has been lack of access to information. And we can no longer afford to have a system that operates on kind of gossip, connections, and all of that. This is information, it needs to be public, especially information around communication. One of the things is that we see our objectives as a litigants group as people who are advocating for transparency in the way in which the commission works. So of course, there is the first thing that brings us to the commission, which is about just being able to see what's happening in relation to the communications that we file, but also how the system itself actually works. The reports of the communications working group, but really to be able to understand what's the internal capacity to do the communications work. I think some of the reports that we have seen over the past number of years have really been able to speak to the way in which resources are skewed, in the ways in which they are allocated. And this means that sometimes a lot of activities that are conducted by the commission, it's a promotional activities, but not really a focus on the communications procedure. So those are some of the things that we would like to be able to know, like who are these people, or even if we don't know the names, but how many people are actually working on communications of the African Commission. So as an objective, then we will have activities that speaks to this advocating for transparency in the way that the commission works on communications. And this then would be linked to promotion of access to information, because this has also been a problem around just being able to access information that should be in the public domain. Here are some of the things that we were thinking about. Are things like the decisions that have been adopted by the commission, that sometimes even after they had been considered by the EU, it would take months before one gets them online. And sometimes people would see the report, like people who have got connections to Addis, that was support presented to the PRC. And then that's how some people will be able to have a sense or an idea of the cases that were there. But it has been a very frustrating thing just not having access to information. And I'm not talking about information that shouldn't be out there, but just information that should be in the public domain. An engagement with Commission to ensure timely finalization of communications. I think some of you will remember that about 4 years ago when we had the Litigants Forum in Johannesburg, one of the things that we had been trying to do was to try and establish something, some sort of a user forum, and it could be us, direct engagement with the Commission, and also we could have states as part of this conversation, because right now, the people who are engaging the Commission is normally the PRC in that way that they do, but it's very hard to have a direct
conversation with the Commission to be able to see where we are in terms of all the things where there needs to be progress. So we wanted to be able to engage with the Commission. So basically, as people who are users of the mandate, the communications mandate, we wanted to be able to know that we would send a letter to the Commission and that there would be a response, that we would raise concerns about the application of a particular rule, and this is even more so important now with the new rules of procedure, so that we are able to see the implementation of these rules of procedure. And so we want to be able to be a group that actually engages. And by engagement, I'm not really talking about us just signing on to letters, but to be able to say that we are a stakeholder, we are a voice, and to set ourselves up that can be heard, and we have that relationship with the Commission when it comes to the communications. We wanted to support the consistent development of jurisprudence, and of course this is a very hard one because we don't write the decisions. So whether decisions are consistently developed or not, it's really not up to us. But as people who have an interest in ensuring that there is consistency, one sure way of doing this would be to be able to analyze the decisions of the Commission, but also to collaborate, especially when making submissions that leads to the development of jurisprudence, to be able to just make sure that we are making arguments that are consistent, with how human rights norms and standards should develop progressively. Because we have seen this kind of inconsistency in the jurisprudence of the Commission. And the last objective is to advocate for the implementation of the decisions by the Commission. We do know that there are various views, and these have changed over the years, starting from the time where the decisions of the Commissions were not called decisions of the Commissions, but something like suggestions of the Commission. But over the years, we have seen and heard the African Union, especially when we had other legal counsel, basically saying, actually, these are decisions of the AU now that they've been considered. So one of the things is that they would also have a role to play in the implementation of the decisions. So for us to be able to see what happens to the decisions that we get from the Commission, it would be important as the Litigants Forum to be able to maintain some kind of vigilance on how this actually happens. So these are the things that we said are the objectives. That's why we exist for as the Litigants Forum. Next slide, please. There are 5 ways of working that we have been able to kind of agree when we were when we were working on this. One has been this idea that as civil society, because that's how we come together as lawyers, kind of representing NGOs, representing law firms, but really as people who are interested in this idea of strengthening African human rights accountability mechanisms, that we need to be accountable ourselves. And we said this has to inform the way in which we work with each other, because we came to the recognition that the lack of accountability has enabled the proliferation of seemingly well-intentioned practices that also serve to weaken civil society, right? So who am I when I go to meet with the Commission? Who am I accountable to when I am asking for things, to change? And this really speaks to one of the things that we've asked for, talked about as an objective, that we don't want the African Commission to be the only party in this relationship that's accountable. We also need to be transparent, and we also need to be accountable as civil society. We also thought that inclusion is a very important kind of value that guides our ways of working. recognizing that our organizations are structured differently and that provides us with different strengths. And this is something that has often come up in the way in which we try to, and this is the distinction between maybe universities, international NGOs, regional NGOs, and national, like kind of domestic NGOs, and how we collaborate. So what resources are there? I'm talking about human, kind of financial, that enable us to do the work of the Litigants Forum. And how do we work in such a way where we recognize each other's strengths and we are able to clearly give tasks to people who have got the capacity to do that, but also that we are able to work in ways that ensure that skills are transferred. And so this is something that talks about inclusion, so that other people do not feel like they are just spectators, and then there are people who are doing work. That we commit ourselves to use this space as a space of learning, that we bring together people who have got diverse skills and with varying degrees of knowledge about the African human rights system, and that together we are able to contribute and leave each other kind of better than how we found each other. But we commit to using this space as a place of learning. One of the things I think that we have struggled with over the years, it's about how people hold knowledge, and sometimes there is no critique around how you don't find women talking about the African human rights systems. Like, we are good to talk about rape, about FGM and early childhood marriage, but not necessarily about the architecture that really builds, the systems, so that whenever something goes wrong, we could just be easily taken out and, like, let the big man come and fix your mess. So if we are continuously learning together and we are seeing this as a space of ongoing learning, then that's what's going to make us build this movement that we want to have, that ends up strengthening these accountability mechanisms. Linked to this is this question of power, that this space belongs to all members of the group and all contributions are valued. So it really goes back to the point we make around inclusion, because if people are not aware of the power that they hold, in other streets we call it checking your privilege, where you come from and the resources that you have and also the voice that they give you, and you are not able to think about how this kind of impacts. And some of these things are really about how we hold, space for ourselves and also for other people. So we wanted to be mindful about all of these things, because we were saying, what are the things that sometimes make our good intentions, to work together, fail? The last thing that we talked about was the political orientation of the group, and I think it's something that has also come up over the years. And when we talk about political orientation of the group, there are sometimes the ways, and this happens at national level too, like they are the good NGOs and then they're the bad NGOs. And the good NGOs are the ones that work towards more collaboration, with the state. And so they will basically say yes. And then they are the hot-headed ones who are pushing for more accountability. And so in their strategies, they are more confrontational. And so sometimes people make this like these two kind of choices, whether we are going to work with like more collaboratively or we are going to be confrontational. And here what we were talking about is that this was established as a pressure group. So to the extent that the relationship works well, when we are collaborating, we will collaborate when there are opportunities to collaborate, but we'll also not shy away from being confrontational when there are things that are not going the way in which we expect things to go. Next slide, please. So with these objectives in mind and with these ways of working that we have set out,
what are the strategies that we thought would make sense? One is knowledge production. And when we talk about knowledge production, we're talking about production of briefing documents and developing content for different audiences. One of the things that kept on coming out from the past few weeks as we during these kind of side events organized by AXIM has been this idea that we actually spend a lot of time talking to each other. So basically an echo chamber. That we needed to be able to do the analysis of what's gone wrong, but we also needed to think about an audience outside of ourselves. So knowledge production is a key way in which the Litigants Forum says we want to be able to do the advocacy, but it's also our field engagement. So in various ways in which we show up as part of civil society, we will have this knowledge, but not only in the form, not only knowledge that is produced to speak to an audience. We want to be relevant, and so partnership building, because one of the things that everyone should recognize. I mean, if there was anyone who thought or who never recognized this, then there is a big mistake, that we cannot do any of this work alone. So partnership building has to be core to what we do. And so one of the things is the relationship with the Secretariat, the Commission, and the various working groups of the commissions. That's the first kind of set of partnerships that we want to. We want to be able to work with other CSOs that are active in other accountability mechanisms. So this relationship between the Commission and also between people who work at the African Court, to be very deliberate and intentional about how we establish this relationship, but more importantly, how we nurture, sustain them. To the extent that there are civil society organizations that are working in the regional economic courts, the committee, that's also something that we want to be able to establish. Actually, the first one is also, I made a mistake. The second one, it's CSOs that are active at the African Commission. So it's not only the Litigants Group, you know, as a silo, but it's basically other people. Because as we were working on the rules of procedure, it wasn't just about the communications mandate, it was about other things that we need to stay in conversation with other people who are interested in using the mechanisms of the African Commission. And then the third one is where we reach out to other CSOs that are working in the regional economic courts, the committee, and also the court. We'd already started this during these events, just having a cross-regional collaboration and really working very closely with actors in the inter-American systems, especially when we are responding to same kind of challenges, such just to be able to learn from each other. And working with the national human rights institutions and other kind of, in the regional umbrella body. So these are the partnerships that we see ourselves over the next 5 years building and also strengthening, because this is what we want to be able to see. We had our last convening, and it was an extremely successful convening. And if you were there, you will remember this, which is the Regional Accountability Mechanism, the Users Forum. What we were trying to do basically with this forum was to be able to do a real assessment of where we were with our mechanisms, to be able to see an analysis of the jurisprudence. What is coming? Are we going forward? Are we going backwards? You know, but also, is the system strong or is the system weak? You know, what are the time frames? Where are we going on admissibility of procedure? Where are we sitting when it comes to the jurisprudence? Have we learned the right things, you know, from other comparative mechanisms? And so this
was supposed to be an annual forum, and we are trying to see if we could resuscitate it. Because if we don't get funding, we'll have to be able to use our own money, you know, as institutions to come together, or this is something we do on the margins of the commission. Maybe we come a few days early, just to be able to say that let us do an assessment of where we are, and then we spend months preparing documents, doing research, so that we are able to understand where the problems are, but more importantly, where we are making progress so that we can continue on that. Next slide, please. We do know that these are some of the things that we do during the African Commission sessions or the margins of the sessions, the legal aid services that we provide. Sometimes we get people to volunteer to run the clinic, but we haven't really popularized the clinic to be able to be fit for purpose. And so that's one of the things we're looking to strengthen. The workshops, these are standard for the past 8 years we have been doing this, running workshops to introduce people to the African Commission, the communications procedure. We have the Litigants Group meetings, and once the Commission is on board, what we are hoping to do is to organize, in collaboration with the Commission, a meeting for state representatives from relevant ministries, departments, and agencies, alternatively to organize such an event to get the Commission on board. The 2016 forum, we had people from the Committee on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, we had people from the African Court, and the African Commission actually refused to attend because they said they'll be opening themselves up to attacks by member states because they'll be seen to be collaborating with us very closely when other mechanisms were able to attend. So I think that's also part of the conversation that we need to be able to have. There is a monitoring and documentation part, which is just trying to understand the PRC retreat outcomes. Have they threatened them with their lives again? The policy documents on working methods of the African Commission, the development of jurisprudence, this comes up over and over again, and the AU reform processes of its organs and institutions so that we are able to see how this has implications for the communications mandate. And then investing in this alternative source of information. This is the information that we are saying should be public, so we will be able to publish the cause list if the Commission is not willing to tell us how many cases are pending, you know, before the Commission. Publication of case developments and pleadings if the Commission is not willing to tell us what's the substance of the cases before the Commission, and then to be able to support case-related advocacy. Final slide, please. We are aware that this is work, the work of movement building. One of the things that we all know is that globally, accountability mechanisms are under increased attacks, but also that there are fewer people, including states, who are in a position to defend them. And so as civil society, as people who are concerned about this weakening of these institutions, we see the importance of working in coalitions. So these are all the things that we have mentioned there, you know, the other sub-regional mechanisms, the various coalitions that exist in other mechanisms. And so basically this is just what kind of ties up what we want to be able to do. So basically that's what we have under this strategy. Good. Was that the last slide? Yeah, I don't think there's a next slide. Good. So maybe we should stop here and actually have questions about the strategy before we move on. Any questions? None?
Give me a moment. There is a question. So, oh, no, the person has taken down their question. So no questions for now.
Okay, are there any hands?
No hands.
Okay, fantastic. So let's move on to.
Hi, sorry.
Dayo.
Hi, Sibongile.
Hello. Hello.
Apologies. This is Nerima from Kellen.
Okay.
Sorry, it seems like my hand is not being seen, so it might be a problem on my side. But I do thank you for sharing the presentation on the strategy. And also thank you, Dayo, for sharing the strategy months ago, which is when we received it. So I do have a question around how we use the strategy collaboratively, more around how many organizations are already here and how many do we hope to include going forward. And is it going to be limited to organizations that actually have communications before the African Commission? Are we planning to bring others in only because there's the issue around educating organizations about the procedure, which might mean that there's some that could use it but haven't had the opportunity to do so because of a lack of understanding of that process. And then finally, in terms of knowledge management and knowledge sharing, are we going to have an open share platform? Because I think one of the biggest issues that have been coming across in our discussions for the last few years and also in this sessions has been the fact that people never actually know what's before the commission at what given time. So we're going to have like an open share platform, and are we allowed to do that in a way that does not in any way affect the existing communications or put anyone in jeopardy of breaking the rules? So thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay. I think I had question number 2, but it's about who are the people, you know, who, or whether that's kind of 1 or 2. So if there's something that I don't answer, please come back. So this is open to people, including people who don't have cases pending before the African Commission, because we are interested in developing a pool of advocates. So even if a person does not have a case, but we hope that they will be able to contribute towards the development of the cases. So it could be people in kind of research institutes, it could be people who have litigating before national courts, but one does not have to have an actual or live case at the African Commission to be a member of the Litigants Group. At the moment, and I think this is something that we need to check, I've looked at the Google list this morning. We have got about 185 people, because we did remove some people. We did we had a roll call, and we asked people to submit information, but I think over the past few years we've just been adding people once again. So we haven't really, this is a new strategy, but it's people who are part of the Litigants Group are part of a mailing list. They are not necessarily kind of signing up to the new strategy. So that's something that we would need to be deliberate about. Like, what does it mean to be a member? You know, maybe it's something similar that we did with SIAC. I think that's what we did actually, and I think Dayo is going to be able to talk about this when he talks about membership, when he goes through the operational and institutional arrangements of the group. The access to information, I think, last week on Tuesday, I think there was a conversation between Ruth and Japheth about 59.3. The Commission has consistently used 59.3 as a barrier from making information that must be that they can't say anything about a case until such time that the AU has considered, you know, and sometimes the prohibition starts, it's not just about the outcome of the case, you know, the decision. So people who have
there were times when people who have shared their own pleadings about what they've sent to the African court. So to the commission. So I think the lack of clarity has been part of the problem. And I do think that this is one of the things that we would need to have a resolution with the commission. And it has to be a campaign or part of the advocacy, because that's why we are saying this is not about confidentiality, this is about secrecy, so that there is not a lot of accountability. So I think there have been times when we have said to people, you know what, if you feel like you want to be able to share information about your case, you should actually be able to share information about your case. It's your pleadings, they haven't written anything. You have only said that you have sent a case to the African Commission, and this is what the case kind of addresses. Because, of course, some of the things, the madness around the separation, of course, of admissibility and merits, but that sometimes, and it's happened a number of times, they'll develop jurisprudence on admissibility, and it would not be possible for people to know that the decision on admissibility or jurisprudence has changed until such time that the full decision is released when merits has been concluded. The problem with this is that the commission has got no qualms about applying jurisprudence that no one else knows about. Only the parties to that case, and they were told not to say anything about the case and themselves. So you have jurisprudence that's sitting there for 5 years that is being applied, but it's actually about cases that are not public. So for me, I think when we are able to show how ludicrous, these things are, the fact that you have new rules of procedure that speaks to amicus, and you don't have information about the cases. So it's like, so you become amicus, how you intervene on which cases. So I do think that it's like really automatic say to the commission, because this idea of making everything like this kind of blanket rule around just not even knowing the names of the cases, let alone the facts of the cases, just is not making sense. So I do think that when we mention that an objective is about transparency, then one of the activities that we do have there as an agent, it's about advocacy on this issue of let's have clarity about what gets publicized and what does not get publicized. And if it doesn't get publicized, we have an understanding of why that is. But this idea that 59.3 prohibits any information about pending communications is not something that is sustainable. I don't know if this answers your question.
Yes, it answers my questions. Thank you.
There's a question I posted in the chat, Sibongile. How can sharing information on pending cases be compatible with the confidentiality rules?
How can sharing information be compatible? But where do these confidentiality rules come from? So that's the big question. Article 59.3 does not have to have such a broad kind of scope, because basically now it's interpreted as prohibiting everything. You can actually say, like, there is a way of reading 59.3 as saying that the only thing is not to hear about the decision, but the fact that there is a case that is pending, the fact that these are the facts of the case, or these are the issues that the commission is deciding upon, this cannot be what 59.3 actually intended, this level of secrecy. The court does not have it, the committee does not have it, none of the regional economic courts. Why would this be just an issue for the African Commission?
No more questions have been sent in, but Eric and Faye, but although Eric's question is what you've just answered, and so Faye just also has his hand raised. So Faye, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask your question. Perhaps he's changed his mind.
Okay, fantastic. I'd like to hand over to Dayo. We'll get back to the work plan so that Dayo can speak to the operational arrangements of how we are imagining the functioning of the litigants group. Thank you, Dayo.
Oh, sorry. Thank you so much, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. I'll quickly speak to the operational and institutional arrangements. I shared this earlier in an email, I think on Wednesday. So I do not know if a number of us have gone through it before now. The Litigants Group, as constituted, is not a registered organization, and we don't have formal legal status, but we are an informal coalition of like-minded organizations and individuals interested in strengthening the communications mandate of the African Commission. In these rules, we have outlined 3 categories of membership. The first one is ordinary membership. Then we have the working groups, and thirdly, the steering committee. I also circulated in my email membership forms for all these categories. All of us are ordinary members, even if we're in the working groups or the steering committee. That's the basic level of membership. The steering committee can admit new members on their application, and in certain circumstances, some members can be expelled. For instance, if they have conflicting interests with the litigants group. The steering committee will be responsible for directing the work and strategy of the group, and that's the driving force of the group, and will work to ensure a sustainable project plan and a financial strategy. Also, the steering committee supervises the coordinator and all of the staff because we intend to hire a full-time coordinator. I've been doing the coordination for the last couple of years, and doing that with IHRD work has not been the most easy thing. So the steering committee also approves all activities and is the decision-making organ. You know that at the moment we have an interim steering committee comprising of IHRDA, ISLA, and the Center for Human Rights. Then after the steering committee, there's the secretariat, which has been IHRDA and will continue to be IHRDA for now. The secretariat houses the coordinator and does the management and day-to-day supervision of the coordinator. Also, the secretariat is responsible for our funding, so the fiscal relationships with donors will be from the secretariat. But this arrangement can be reviewed by the members of the steering committee at the request. After the secretariat, we have the working groups, which are kind of like the technical resource of the coalition. Members of the working group must have special expertise that allows them to contribute to the work. The expertise could be in a number of issues, including public interest law, mobilization, access to relevant networks, finance and funding, and so on. Members of the working groups must write an official statement publicizing the support of the litigants group and also sign litigants group communications. They can be individuals or organizations, so there's no requirements for them to be organizations. Individuals can be members of the working groups, and the working groups will work on issues of special interest to them. There's no limit to the number of issues that working groups can work on once it fits into the general strategy of the litigants group. The composition of new working groups and the membership of working groups will be determined by the steering committee. But members are encouraged to propose starting new working groups or to join existing working groups. Apart the working groups, there are the ordinary members, which is all of us. Can be individuals and can be organizations. But then there will be individuals or organizations who have an interest in groups work, but cannot participate in the governance structure or in the implementation of the group's activities. Maybe they lack the expertise or they lack capacity. However, all ordinary members are encouraged to be part of the discussions of the work of the group. They're encouraged to be part of the information sharing that goes on within the group. And they're encouraged to be part of the joint press statements which the group puts out. Then we intend to hire a full-time coordinator who will be housed at IHRDA, will be answerable on a day-to-day basis to IHRDA, but ultimately to the steering committee. The duties of the coordinator would include organizing our meetings, organizing our workshops, coordinating our stakeholder engagement, tracking decisions and processes at the African Commission towards achieving our goals. Yes, and so on. Any other tasks given to the coordinator by the steering committee. These rules are open to comment now, but if adopted, they could be amended or terminated by a 2/3 majority vote of the steering committee, supported by majority of the members. And then any of these rules found on an enforceable or mediator will be severed from the rest of the document, and the other rules will continue to apply. Basically, that's a summary of the rules. I'll be able to take questions or comments regarding them. Thank you. Tiffany, please let's know if people want to ask questions, and let's allow them. The questions can be typed.
So nobody's put any questions in the box, but they are all able to unmute themselves and ask their questions directly as well.
Okay, thank you. So please, if you have any questions, unmute yourself. If there are no questions, then perhaps I hand over back to Sibo.
Okay. Having heard what you had to say about the strategy and also about the ways, the operational and institutional arrangements, part of it is really a question of capacity, of interest, on who is interested in joining the group, but more importantly, who is interested in learning more about the things that we want to do. And we'd also like to know who thinks that they will be able to support some of the things that we have mentioned as part of our strategy. And then from there, we'll just put the draft work plans so that we are able to share what we would like to be able to do in the next year. So yeah, so Tiffany, you can share that, and if there are any questions, we can just look, or any kind of comments. Tiffany, yeah, if you can upload the work plan.
All right, just give me a moment.
Thank you. The activities that we would like to kind of prioritize until we see each other again. We don't know if we'll be able to see each other in November, or if November is also virtual.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right.
Can you make it bigger? No. Okay. I think it's my screen. Okay. I'm not seeing everything, so I'm just gonna open it here by myself. Good. We've mentioned the long-term objectives of the working group, and now we just going to talk about the intermediate objectives. The adoption and implementation of progressive rules of procedure. At the time we wrote this, we didn't have these rules of procedure. So this immediately moves us to implementation of the rules of procedure. We were supposed to have another presentation by Michael that kind of highlights what are the things in the new rules of procedure that have got implications for the communications mandate, but I think we've had quite a number of discussions that look into this. The resolution of policy, structural, technical, and interpretational barriers which impede on the functioning of the ACHPR. We are not going to obviously list all of these, but we wanted to just have about 3, like when it comes to the tasks that we are going to do that, but that's one of the things, to find out what are these things. So people who really understand how the African Commission work will be able to help us with this, to say, as an intermediate objective, maybe in the next 3 to 5 years, we want to be able to understand the policy, the structural, technical, and issues which impede on the functioning of the African Commission, because the question is a simple one and it's the same one all the time. Why does this system not work as it should? The establishment and strengthening and clarification of ways of engaging the Secretariat. And there are a number of examples that we've thought about, like putting together a constitution, a working group that really focuses on this relationship development with the Secretariat and also with the Commission. And of course, this shouldn't be just with individuals, so it should be built in such a way that it's able to withstand the changes that happen, at the African Commission. Quality control, of course, we are not the people who are doing quality control, but what we are able to do, or what's possible from our end, is to analyze the decisions. So who do we have, or are we doing summaries of these decisions, like an analysis of this decision, so that we can actually say that this is a thumbs down, or this is like a thumbs up. Are these decisions that we are getting from the Commission making sense? Cross-fertilization between accountability mechanisms to ensure consistency.
It's 13 hours.
So when we are looking at the quality of the decisions, is a jurisprudence that's been developed at the African Commission kind of consistent with what the commission, with the court is actually doing? Because if they are all interpreting the charter, we need to be able to have clear and consistent interpretations of various rights. And strengthening the effective function of our coalition. So, of course, April 2020 didn't happen, but we wanted to launch the group, and we wanted the effective functioning of the coalition, formalization of current membership. We have 65 members who are active, establishment of the working groups, and then putting in place a monitoring and evaluation framework. So this is something that we can start with now. Effective resource mobilization, having a coalition communications. We have a draft website. We do have a logo, and we can start now with populating the website, and also having a quarterly newsletter with that we send to members of the coalition. So this is under this work of strengthening the coalition. We want to go back to the convening of the forum, and we were looking at June 2021. So this is still not out of our reach. And also the Litigants Group meeting twice a year at every commission session. The capacity strengthening work that we already do, and we did it last week. Monitoring and documentation to enable the group to undertake timely advocacy. And we have mentioned that, monitoring the PRC outcomes, monitoring the AU reform processes of its organs and institutions, monitoring policy documents on working methods at the Commission. And so here, really, this is an activity that depends a lot on people who are working in Addis, people who understand the African Union's procedures and systems and developments that are taking place there. We also have an activity that's on provision of legal services, the legal aid clinics. But we thought that here we'll do the clinics. Of course, the clinics, we can only do them physically, not only, but we do them during the sessions. But we can, part of the relationship that we're establishing is to be able to be on the roster of the commission to provide pro bono legal representation for cases that are pending. So members of the litigants group can do that. If you look at the commission, there have been quite a number of cases over the number of years, the past 5 years, that have been dismissed owing to lack of diligent prosecution. So we do think that this is maybe somehow a gap that we could fill, and then use our website as a place where people can start asking for legal advice or to be connected to lawyers that are providing pro bono legal services on various kind of thematic issues. And then the alternative sourcing and sharing of information. This is like one of the most kind of basic things, but right now, most of the time, the question that Nerima was asking, it's because it's so contested about what's public and what's not public. It's like a guerrilla tactic, you know, alternative sourcing and sharing of information, but it's publicizing a cause list that gives us the list of cases that are pending before the commission and what the issues are. So this becomes a parallel system because the mechanism itself is not willing to do this. And then when we meet, to be able to share more information on case developments. The knowledge production, I guess it's people who have got capacity to do research, development of briefing documents. But when we were talking about some of these examples, we were saying we are producing knowledge for different audience. So people could start working on podcasts because there are already partners here who are working on that, short films or videos, but really to be able to have the information disseminated in various ways. And then the partnership building, that's the work that we were talking about around how we do that. So the first few items, as you can see, these are the things that we thought we could do between April then, after we'd launched, and June. But some of these things are still things that we can do between now and April next year. So that's the draft work plan that we had put in place, and this is the way. So all that we need is basically the last column that speaks to the organizations that are volunteering to join the working groups, and then saying that this is the capacity that we have, and this is the work that we will be able to do for the litigants group. Thank you. Over to you, Dayo, or if there are questions.
We have any questions? If I don't see any indications that there are any questions. The other thing we have on the agenda is the revival of the litigants working groups. For now, we've only listed two, which come out clearly from the strategy and the work plan, and which is the working group to work on the cost list, which we want to publicize, and then the working group to work on issues relating to confidentiality and the debate around the interpretation of Article 59.3 of the Charter. But then, like I said earlier, we could have other working groups on issues within the strategy that members are interested in working on. I would have liked to show us what the current case list looks like. The one we have now. Tiffany, is there a way I can show this from my screen? Let me look. Okay. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay. So this, like I said, was the last version we had in 2016. And if you see here, it lists the communication number and title to give information about who is filing the communication, the authors, a brief summary of the communication, articles allegedly which the communication claims have been violated, the remedies requested, whether provisional measures have been requested or issued, and the dates the provisional measures were granted, the date the complaint was submitted, the date the commission was seized, the date the admissibility brief was submitted, and the date the communication was deemed admissible. I guess in light of the new procedural rules, some of these will change because we have, for instance, the dates the merits submissions were made. In light of the new rules, now admissibility and merits will be submitted at the same time. And then the date the merits decision was received, and then what is the outcome of the communication? What did the commission decide? And then what steps have been taken by the states and other relevant authorities towards implementation, or what has been done by the complainants themselves to work on implementation. Has there been any involvement of the African courts? And then if there's any other comments that the authors would like to share. So basically this tracks a communications development from the beginning to the very end, and then to provide relevant information to be shared amongst members to help us track what is going on at the commission to like Sibongile says, to stop this, to work against this secrecy going on at the commission. We had a colleague, an Ottoman from Lawyers for Justice in Libya, working on this up to 2016, but since she left that organization, work has stalled on this document. And so we would like to constitute a working group to pick up this work so that it's not just one person doing it. And all of us will be encouraged to share information about cases we're working on to be included on this cost list. The way we did it before was to share forms in which you could fill in these information and send to Anna to put into the documents. And I think we might as well continue like that once the working group is constituted. I think that's all from me. Sibo. Hi, Sibo.
Cool. So the what we had to say basically, it's those 4 things. We have gone, developed a strategy as mandated, and we shared the strategy. We've developed ways of working. We have shared that. There is a draft work plan, and there's also some of the working groups that are there. And so that's the information that we wanted to be able to communicate, and therefore to be able to share your views, but also about your willingness and ability to participate in this. You don't have to make decisions now. Dayo is the kind of coordinator, interim or acting, or so what you should be able to do is to write to him. On the chat box, I have put Dayo's contact details, fagbemi@ihrda.org. He'll be able to share with you the application forms, but also you'll be able to get the strategy, the work plan, because what we would like to hear from you is what you would be able to contribute, you know. So what are the gifts that you are giving to the Litigants Group? And yeah, so if there are no questions, this should be the end. Any hands? No?
Hi, Sibo. I was going to suggest that we have all those comments collated between now and November when will be the next session of the commission, and then maybe on the sidelines we can collate these things and make decisions right there and then, and not just to leave it hanging perpetually.
Okay. Right. Tiffany, if there's nothing, then we'll have to let people go. I'm not seeing anything.
No,
Any hands? I'm not.
unless
People can unmute themselves.
yeah, people can unmute themselves, and Narima has her hand up, but I think that might have also been from her previous question. But people can all unmute themselves, yes.
Good. So I think that's that kind of information, and so we'll just leave it from there. Leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us this morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. That's all we had to say.
I have been wondering to myself whether the lack of comments is because of the lack of understanding of what all our presentations, or because the members are not interested. I hope it's not the other one. I hope it's none of them actually.
We don't know, so it's your mailbox that's going to tell you what it was, whether people didn't understand or whether people are not interested. But people will reach out.
There's something
Yes?
about text. Give me a moment. Did it go in? So someone says about the case database being previously shared with other members. If not, yeah, so if you could just share the case database, Dayo.
Okay, I'll share that after this meeting.
All right, and then other than that, it's just been a lot of thank yous from Edmund, Karine, Narima, Sophie, and Alejandra. Everyone saying thank you so much.
Yeah, but the thing is, Edmund, yes, Tiffany?
No, Gabriella just basically said that if you'd like a copy of the strategy and members forms, please email Dayo, which I'll repost. And then Narima just said that everything was understood.
Good. The cause list has not been
updated, I think, since 2017. And so that's why it's one of the things that we are prioritizing. So Edmund, whatever you get, it's going to be like a couple of years old. But we hope to be able to bring it up to speed.
Okay, nothing else.
Right. Thank you very much for your time and have a great week.
Much everyone.